coming up today.
Pressure is funny. It's really like such a flip of a switch. You can feel it. You can think about all of the potential negatives that come from something and look at it as pressure, or you can like really look at it as a fun opportunity. And I go on both sides of that line all the time.
This is Radio Juxtapoz. Khruangbin. Fuck it.
Khruangbin.
Yes.
Khruangbin are an understated psychedelic wig-sporting funk trio from Houston, Texas. Taking their name from the Thai word for aeroplane, a perfect symbol of the worldly exploration they've become known for. In the space of 3 albums, they've brought their genre-defiant fusion of globally influenced grooves from the culty hands of crate diggers into the forefront of mainstream radio plays and festival main stages. No easy task for a band that barely use vocals. Inspired and influenced by guitar music from the Congo to Vietnam and everywhere in between, Mark Speer, Laura Lee, and Donald DJ Johnson are the perfect package for an audience hooked on audio exploration. Sonically, they deep dive into the unknown regions of the world whilst crafting an instantly recognizable but constantly evolving visual direction. On stage, they channel the bold wardrobes of Bootsy Collins, Grace Jones, or Bowie, but perform with a hypnotically subtle disposition that complements the journey rather than distracting from it. Today on Radio Juxtapoz, we remotely join all 3 of the bands scattered across the US to talk about their strong connection to aesthetics, the role art plays in their craft, and the drive behind their latest release, a remix compilation of their 3rd studio album, Mordechai, which is out now. If this is your first time listening to Radio Juxtapoz, how you doing? Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks to Michaela from Shorefire for lining this up. Let's get stuck into it.
I'm Laura Lee. I play bass for Khruangbin. I'm currently in the Hudson Valley in New York.
I am DJ. I play drums in Khruangbin, and I'm currently in the band's home of Houston, Texas.
My name is Mark. I play guitar in Khruangbin, and I'm currently residing in East Bay, Oakland, California.
So I'm going to start things by asking probably quite an obvious question here. The pandemic has been quite a big part of our lives for the last 18 months. How has it affected you all artistically?
Oh, I think we've been lucky in terms of where we were as a band. It kind of came at a good time. We'd been touring a lot, and I think it was good for us to have some time to get grounded. But we also were prepared in the sense that we'd been ready to release a record before it happened, and we decided to put it out anyway. So it sort of felt like, I don't know, we didn't miss anything somehow.
Have you guys had a chance to make any music together through this process? Because obviously that record was finished just as the pandemic started.
No, it's we've definitely been very, very lucky that we put the record out when we did. Oddly enough, we were all like, should we put it out? Should we put it out? Should we not put it out? Like as soon as kind of travel started to open back up, we started meeting back up in Houston and working on more things. So there is always kind of a constant stream of stuff coming out of the Khruangbin camp, which is great. But yeah, it's also been nice to kind of step away from the road for a little bit.
You eager to get back into it?
Eager. Also, I say this often, terrified to get back on the road. Okay, so this is my example I like to give. So imagine when you're like in kindergarten and someone talks to you about college, and you're like, college? How can I even think about going to college? I'm in kindergarten. That sounds like so overwhelming. And then by the time you get to high school, you're like, bring college on. Let's do this. And it's kind of like, playing a show, starting in a small venue, going to mid venue, like high venue, and you make that progression. But after a year and a half of being off the road, it's like I feel like I'm back in kindergarten. I got to like kind of have a ramp up, but I'm not going to get that ramp up. We just kind of got to jump back into it. So the best I can do is practice a lot and try and be prepared.
Laura Lee, you have a previous incarnation in the art world, do you know? And I'm interested to know, as an art magazine, how your experience in the art world influenced or informed the creative entity that is Khruangbin.
A lot, in so many different ways. I wear a different outfit every show, and we have a different show poster for every show, just on like, one facet of Khruangbin. There are two unique sort of art pieces delivered at every single Khruangbin show, which is really cool. And I think that comes from a sort of curatorial brain, one that I really, really enjoy flexing for many reasons, because it looks cool to start, but it's also really amazing opportunity to work with so many different visual artists and collaborate on different things.
Has that added an extra pressure into what is already quite an intense process?
Pressure is funny. It's really like such a flip of the switch. You can feel it. You can think about all of the potential negatives that come from something and look at it as pressure, or you can like really look at it as a fun opportunity. And I go on both sides of that line all the time. But I enjoy that aspect of it. If we may have announced it already, or it's going to be announced today, but we're like announcing 2 Detroit shows, and the poster for that particular show was really cool. Some cities I have more of like a reference to, or like visual reference points to give the artist. But for that particular one, it was so fun. I was like, there's those Diego Rivera murals in Detroit that are like about the Motor City aspect of Detroit that are really cool, and they're like hard. They feel like Detroit. And it was like, got to tell that artist and work with that artist, can you pull reference from this mural, but take these Khruangbin references and make it into this cool, musical poster. It's awesome. And it's like, and I don't know. And it's just one little part of the whole thing.
So do you take on the role of an art director in this scenario, or are you illustrating yourself?
No, it's more of an art director capacity, curator capacity. I like spend hours looking at different artists on Instagram or on art magazines online and try to hunt to find artists that don't normally make music posters.
So what is it that you're looking for then in this process?
I just find something that like feels good, that looks cool. Another part of my background is that I worked at like Wyden and Kennedy, and I certainly feel like being around that aspect of creative direction was really interesting. And one of the guys I worked for always said, like, make me feel something, and if a work can make you feel something, then that's the point. So if I find illustrators whose work make me feel something, I pocket them. And then when it comes time to look at getting artists for particular shows, then it's looking at that roster and seeing what vibe fits the city, or I don't know, something that just feels like a natural pairing.
So how quickly did this come into the band's identity? Was it there since day one, or is it just grown over time?
We've always wanted to have a very strong like aesthetic of what it's supposed to look like. Like, there's rules to the music, and there's rules to like what we do and don't want to have as part of the visual vibe, And I know inside of like the graphic designs, like you don't use Comic Sans, but dude, there's certain times when you got to use Comic Sans. In this band, there is no Comic Sans. We don't really fuck around with that. We definitely fuck with an internal memo, and it might be like Comic Sans. I think a lot of the initial aesthetic was trying to make it look like a private press, as professional as possible, but like, little Easter eggs. Like every time up until we had folks doing, our show posters and artwork, we tend to do a lot of it ourselves, but for me, it's all about the details. Like, sometimes all you need is a canvas and text on it for it to like be effective, right? But if the text's too sharp, if it's too like, if there's no texture to it, it gets in that uncanny valley vibe, so I'll take all the time in the world I need to go and zoom in really, really hard and get this like kind of fuzzy edges, like it's been printed, and picking the right typefaces and picking the right positioning, and like the texture and the color is all very, very important. It can't just be like a red background. It's be like a red background that so subtly is like, it's a little more red up here, it's a little less red in the middle, a little crap like that really, really makes, it makes a difference. We were doing this Air Krung thing where we were like kind of reimagining plane tickets, so every time we'd post a radio show, we had like a plane ticket to that region that we were showcasing music from. And I went online and found all these freaking, old plane tickets and cut them up and change the text and recontextualize them and put them into new things. And that was so much fun to do. It took me forever because I'm not fast at Photoshop, but
that sounds kind of like what you guys do musically anyway. Diving, taking something and then reworking it and then putting out something new.
I mean, essentially, yes. That's exactly it.
Piecing together records, the band began to assemble, formed by digitally passing compositions back and forth until the track feels complete. The albums are then recorded live together in an old barn that belongs to Speer's family 85 miles outside of Houston, where it's been told the cows regularly assemble to listen to the performances, once again confirming cows are chill as fuck. In turn, the cows have made appearances on the cover art for their 2018 sophomore album Con Todo el Mundo and the acid-soaked dub version Hasta el Cielo. I was interested to know what the band's relationship to art was and how that's evolved as they've grown.
I'm kind of the late bloomer as far as coming into the art scene in the band. I've learned so much from Mark and Laura both about different artists, and it's really opened my eyes to notice the subtleties in different things I might have always seen but never really stuck out or paid attention to. So I'm kind of the newbie in that sense, and getting my feet wet into it.
It's funny when you consider the differences of how we're exposed to music from such an early age, but for so many of us, art is just this kind of like untouchable world.
I mean, galleries can tend to be very like kind of, very exclusive and freaking, what's the word, elite or something. It's like, It's like it's taking this thing that it's a product of the people, right? And now you're making it into this like, what do they mean by that? And it's like all this like, I'm sure you've been to the Artie Bullock's website where you just, it's like generate, and it'll just generate like art bullocks. It's like it'll just spit out like really meaningless art reviews of anything. Like, well, they juxtapose the
Yeah, that's exactly how I got the job doing this.
But yeah, like growing up in Houston, like there's so many museums and art galleries, but I don't know, like a lot of my friends just did art, whether it was graffiti or it was just like drawing or it was large scale like crazy paintings.
It's melding now, I mean, certainly when I worked in museums and stuff, it still had a very much a privileged tone to the experience. You had to be privileged enough to have time to spend to learn about art, you know what I mean? Which is actually like a privileged thing if you have time to do that. And then I think because there's been so much incredible street art that's turned everything on its head, it's like now you see street art in galleries, and it's the same thing of like street fashion is now high fashion. It's like there is becoming this bigger conversation about the entire thing and the experience that you're talking about. The LACMA in LA sometimes actually feels like an Instagram museum. It's like the pieces seem to be there for you to take pictures in, which makes sense as modern art because that's how people are experiencing it,
You always seem to have a hand in each of the album's artwork. How does this process work?
Well, they've all been different. The very first one was actually not designed by us. It was by our friend Sam, Universe Smiles Upon You. And then I think we didn't want to get stuck in any one particular visual world because every album's going to be different. We're going to be different. Mark designed the second one and spent a long time coming up with different versions, and all of which I said I didn't like. And I felt so bad. He'd worked so hard. And I was like, nope. And then he showed me a picture of cows.
Last one.
And I was like, that's it.
I've been working on it, off and on for weeks, but I think it was like, okay, we're having a meeting in the morning. across the street from my apartment at a coffee shop. I have some stuff ready to go. So I, worked all night and tried to get as many different versions as I could, at least into a spot where I could show and be like, this looks good, this looks good, this looks good. They all looked good, but just like Ella was saying, like, make me feel something, So I was like, okay, well, here's my more or less finished versions of all the ones I've shown you over the couple of weeks, and here's this last one I just kind of put together, and that's the one that she liked the most. It's like, oh, great.
We've been working under this sort of ethos that the music comes before anything else. The music comes before the words come, the music comes before the artwork comes, the music comes before the tour comes. So it's sort of like that. And it's amazing how, visual music can be. And the cows just looked like that record to me. So that's what we went with. Mordechai was different because the title of the album was based on a story and experience that I had. And so I made the cover based on that experience. It's like, these were the elements to my story, and I drew them, and then worked with Nate, who sort of helped make it more for an album, because I was just using pencil colors and drawing, which is not, the vibe.
So can you talk to me about this experience that you had a little bit?
Oh, I was burnt out on tour, and I was really struggling. And made a friend named Mordechai, and he took me on a hike that really felt life-changing at the time. It just felt like a shift in how I was feeling about the world, and it felt important. Yeah, we took a hike, and there were wolves, and there was a harvest moon, and so it was just like I just took those elements and put them together, because it felt like the only way to make something unique is like, it has to be something specific to you, or like an experience that I had, and the symbols that I had from my story are unique to me. Nobody else has that story. And so it felt like that was the way to weave the visual world.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the process in your music videos then? Do you keep a hand in them? Do you have ideas that are in your head that you just try to find a team to realize, or do you just present the track and kind of see what comes back?
Yeah, I would say the last one. There are some really beautiful people I know, friends I have, that are creative directors in that capacity. It'll usually be like the tonality of the song will match somebody's personality. And that's how I go about placing this person with, or entrusting this person with the song. But the thing is, when you work with other artists, you need to let them be artists, because you're an artist, you know what it's like, and you want to give them enough freedom to feel like they're expressing something with, so it's about giving the right brief and the amount of things that then they still feel free to come up with their own, treatment.
I feel like embedded into the Khruangbin ethos is this intentional pivot away from, I guess we could call a Western lens. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the journey of this started?
I'm going to point to Mark to talk about that.
I think a lot of really, really good music comes from other places aside from the West. Like there's a whole industry built around, the music that in the English speaking world tends to consume. And it's just like, they're not gonna, like, think about like the Latin Grammys, right? It's like they had to make their own Grammy section just for people who spoke Spanish. It's like, because it's like when you go to the record store, it's like, oh, okay, here's, normal music. Here's the music this is the music you actually want. And then here's like the world music section.
The world
you don't really want to go in there. Like, whatever, just anything that's not in English, that's where that goes. And it's so fucking condescending, man. It's like, geez, like there's so much good music, so much, to me, I mean, I'm opinionated on this stuff, but like so much better music, that's not in English. Like we just kind of get dragged into the same old, formulas and stuff. And when you go and listen, let's say you like go check out a rock band from, I don't know, Yemen, right? The way that they're going to play rock is going to be different than how, American or British folks are going to play rock. just because like their experience is different. They might have the exact same tools, still using electric guitars, still using drums, still using bass, still have a singer that's like, giving it to the people, but like it's going to sound different. And all these different experiences and all these different regions and all these different ways of speaking are all like creating their own styles. And it's like, man, let's just explore that stuff. It's so fun to like go find something that here in the West, we're like, oh, wow, what a gem. I just found this, like, it's so obscure. No, it's not. This dude's a massive like star in the Philippines, huge star. Everyone knows who this person is, but you're like, I just found this, it's so unique. It's like inside of the Western music scene. Yeah, hell yeah, it's unique. But I like finding that stuff. It's so cool. And the way that music is the way that music is reimagined and recontextualized, and it's an endless journey.
What was your coming of age on that then? Was it a sort of eureka moment where a light bulb went off and you realized that there was a whole world out there?
It would have been probably in the early to mid 90s, birth of the internet and CD-ROMs and more music coming out and being showcased to mainstream audiences that weren't necessarily just your standard, rock and roll. Not that there's anything wrong with rock and roll. Rock and roll is amazing. I remember being in the car and one of my mom's best friends was like driving us somewhere. This would have been like maybe 87 or 88. And they were playing, Graceland, right? I mean, Graceland probably busted the door wide down for mainstream, America to not only accept, but like love like South African music. He gets a lot of guff for all that shit. But bro, like if that hadn't happened, would King Sunny Ade be like as popular as he was? Or for that matter, Fela Kuti? Talk about two people with such a completely different political idea on what was happening in Nigeria at the time. But like, dude, Ladysmith, I mean, come on, man. Like they were the sound of Lifesavers at the beginning of the 90s. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know it's silly, but it's like, dude, like that opened the door for a lot of things. Like the whole ska thing in America. Let's say in the 90s, when you say ska, you think, okay, Money Money Boss Tones, like No Doubt, and like Skank and Pickle and bands like this, right? But like ska comes from Jamaica. Like that's Jamaican music. And in that, it's like that's an African music.
Not a question I thought I'd ask you, but how do you feel about that second or third wave ska? I'm interested to know about the difference in this capacity between appropriation and appreciation.
And I might get in trouble for saying this, right? But like, okay, so in the 90s, you had like ska punk, which was absolutely a fusion of music. Very fast, very high energy, horn based. It always, had that upbeat stuff, but it was like clearly mixed with different genres than just like, ska music. By the late 90s, because of the kind of, I guess, mainstreamization of, bands like Money Money Boss Tones and No Doubt, in the underground, everybody went to go being traditional ska, right? And the audience was like, what the hell are we supposed to do with this? Like, this is so slow compared to what we've been dancing to throughout the 90s. And I say with that, going back to traditional ska is actually so appropriative, because now, no, we're going to be real ska. Like, no, you're not. You're not from Jamaica. You don't know how to play these kind of rhythms. You do know how to play the ska punk fusion that was actually really, really new and amazing, and taking from all these different places and creating something new out of it. Like, I think back to that time and how open it all was. Like you had people from, every ethnic group and every walk of life, like coming to shows, at least the ones that I was going to in Houston. And the music was like, it was so new. There was nothing backward looking about it at all. Yeah. So as far as like the appropriated thing, like, yeah, sure. I mean, everything's appropriated, isn't it? This is an art magazine, right?
Yeah, we're very familiar with this.
Good luck making anything without being influenced from other people,
DJ, I'm interested to know for you how this influence and impact from these otherworldly genres began to influence your style.
To me, it kind of highlighted and somehow, oddly enough, reaffirmed the things that I'd already known. Like when I met Mark's always listened to music that's not in English since I've known him, it's not so uncommon now in 2021, but back in 2005, that was kind of weird. You know, you didn't meet people like that every day. He played me a lot of this stuff that he was listening to, and I was picking up on the similarities between the things that I, come to know and love, like, of course, like James Brown and funk music from the 60s and 70s. And, it's like kind of these same grooves that they've taken and they've put in their own ethnic twist to it. And it's just as funky as the things that I'd come to know and love. And I was like, wow, this is really good. But it's something I would have never have found or gravitated towards if it hadn't been for that door being open.
I wonder if you started to see similarities in these global genres.
Yeah, like I didn't. So when you think funk music, for me, when I think funk music, years ago, I had like one very narrow interpretation of what it was and where it came from and who was doing it. Now you hear someone that's literally on the other side of the planet that's, like some Turkish band that's got these crazy bass lines and sick drum fills that are happening that I didn't know was happening over there, because my interpretation of what, Turkish or, that part of the world, I thought it was, one particular thing that was, in a sense, kind of shaped by a Western, like you said, the Western lens. Like Disney puts out stuff and it's like, you watch Aladdin, it's like, okay, that's what the Middle East is like. Like, no, not. I mean, there are some things.
Just a little snack, guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that they pull from it, but that's Broadway. It's very Broadway. But man, like when you really start to dig into it, it's really funky. There's some really funky stuff all over the world. Mark even found Chinese funk.
Sure did.
We lost him for 3 days. We had no contact from Mark for 3 days. He got lost trying to find the quintessential Chinese funk.
You found it?
I mean, I found some Chinese funk. I don't know if it's quintessential. I'm sure that some of your readers might be able to point me in the right direction of okay, yeah, that's funky, but this is really funky,
I feel like this is veered down sort of a path of the Mighty Bush a little bit. That is one maybe the British listeners will pick up on.
Barry, was he in Mighty Bush?
They're a comedy outfit that wear a lot of stilettos and a lot of wigs, and I feel like you'd like them. They search for the funk.
That's the whole, P-Funk mythos, isn't it? It's all about Afrofuturism and the funk coming down from another planet, and then there's the whole Mr. Nose trying to keep everybody from enjoying the funk, and there's a whole comic book. The artwork on those albums are amazing. The wall,
truly,
it's a whole universe. Yeah. They created a whole universe inside of their stuff, and that's, I mean, to take it back, that's kind of what we were always trying to do, is kind of create our own little universe inside of it. Theirs is much more elaborate. We kind of leave a lot to interpretation.
We're working on it. But I think it is, and it's how do you create a world on stage, in an album cover, sonically, all of these things that feels true to you guys as a collective, and the contribution has some sort of twist, or there's some actual genuine contribution to the world in some way. It's not too much like anything else, I guess. I don't know.
Have you had a chance to flex this in the live performance yet? Or have you got some goals that you're still kind of working towards?
We're working. I mean, I think to start it out, it's in creating that universe, the wigs and the outfits and the whole thing on a small scale, in a 200 cap room, was actually really effective in creating, we look like us on stage. Nobody else looks like Khruangbin on stage because of that, trying to build on it. We'll see where we get.
A lot of the music that you reference will have been made on quite unique and maybe a little obscure instruments. I wonder if you've had any sort of problems or experiences trying to recreate sounds that you want to get, but just can't quite land on a guitar.
I mean, the idea for me is, just as a guitar player, is I need to be able to play this music on just a normal guitar, one you can just pull off the shelf at Guitar Center or whatever. You know what I mean? This is not supposed to be like, oh, he can only do that because he has this like really special, it's like, no, like it's just a guitar. I mean, guitar itself, dude, let's just talk about a guitar for a second, dude. Like, it is a Spanish instrument. The Gibson was called the ES 335. ES just means electric Spanish guitar, and since it's from Spain, it's influenced by the lute, which is influenced by the oud, which is an Arabic instrument. And of course, the oud is influenced by something earlier than that. You just keep going back further and further. So like, to say the electric guitar is an American instrument, no, it's complete horsewash. Like, let's just get into some fun stuff. And like, let's realize that all these instruments and all these things could not be possible without the exchange, either forced or voluntary, of, music ideas from across different cultures. I mean, the drum kit wasn't always a drum kit, what we call a trap kit now with all like the stuff in it. Like, each one person played those things back in the old days. So yeah, like we try to make the music that we do on just normal, right? Modern Western rock band instruments.
But I think one thing that you do, Mark, is like he will learn vocal licks.
Totally.
Like Lata Mangeshkar and, from India,
Absolutely.
will learn her vocal licks, and actually making those licks on a guitar is something new somehow, because I don't know, or you doing it, like you trying to sound like a woman's voice on a guitar.
I mean, I think that's interesting that you say that, because like from my philosophy, I think that most musical instruments are trying to imitate the human voice.
Right.
The most versatile instrument is totally the human voice. So when someone, plays the violin and it makes you weep, there's just something so lyrical about it. It's because it's really effective at, creating that thing that.
It's not just that, like you'll direct, Will Van Horn, who's our pedal steel player who plays with us on all our records, he'll direct him to not sound like a pedal steel, he'll want him to sound more like, I don't know, an organ or something at different points in time. And it's almost like trying to sound like a different instrument on the instrument you're playing.
Yeah. I think it's partly because of the pedal steel has been codified into sounding like, what you hear on country and Western radio. That's what the pedal steel is supposed to sound like, even though the steel guitar is a Hawaiian instrument. When you go back and listen to old Hawaiian music, it doesn't sound like Garth Brooks. No offense to Garth. Garth's the man. But
he's definitely listening.
Garth. But yeah, the steel guitar, that's a Hawaiian instrument that came to the mainland after the whole tiki craze.
Is this part the driving force behind the way that you use vocals then, manipulating to the point where they sound maybe like an instrument in their own right?
Oh, definitely. And we want all of our vocals to sound like one group. You don't necessarily want it to sound like one person. It's supposed to sound like all of us singing together at the same time, because it is.
Thinking about that thread there, you recently worked with Paul McCartney, didn't you? What was the reaction like when you found out that was going to be happening?
I remember I rolled on my floor that day because I was like, I didn't know what to do with my emotions. But yeah, I don't know if it was a text. I think it might have been a text. I think our manager might have texted us saying, do you want to remix Paul McCartney song? Casual, because there's no other way to deliver information except for casually.
I feel like that would have been worthy of a telegram at your door.
Right. Khruangbin, stop. Do you want to remix? Stop. A Paul McCartney song. Stop. Sincerely, stop. We hadn't heard the song, but you don't say no.
Paul. But we were playing around with his vocal, and there was a point where it felt like Paul was sounding like David Bowie. And we were like, well, that's cool.
I like that. Manipulate the instrument to the point where it just kind of sounds like something else.
Completely different instrument. Like we took the McCartney preset, and then we're like, no, let's pull up the Bowie preset. Let's do that. I mean, initially I was just trying to sound like Andy Summers on that song, straight up. That was my goal.
It was very stressful. Remixing can be a stressful process, especially because we're a band. We're not a singular artist who's just making something to please them. So it's not like we're behind a laptop cutting and pasting things and picking things we like, where, we have to do it the Khruangbin way, which is learn the song, then play the song, then change the song, then play that, and it's like,
and then you're like, you've tried 3 different versions, like 3 different, completely different musical approaches to it. And you're like, is any of this good? Let's try one more, and it's like, it's I guess it's kind of like when you're remixing electronically, you're like, I want to try this drum beat. I'm gonna try this drum beat. And it's just like click and drag, but with us it's not click and drag. Like you literally have to just play it,
So we were recording a different version every day, and we decided on the version. And I remember coming in, I was like, I don't think I like it. I don't think I like my bass line. And Steve, our engineer, just came up to me. He was like, this is the version that we are recording today, and it was like, we can't go back and forth. And I started crying because I always cry in the studio at some point. He was like, I'm sorry. But it sounds great.
I wonder if there was a connection there between this concept and your forthcoming, now available Mordechai remix album.
A total happy coincidence. We'd started on our remix album before we'd heard about this. But I've been calling this year like the year of, Khruangbin and remixes, because sort of all coming out at the same time.
I guess this is just another arm of your curatorial direction.
I mean, in a real similar way to the way I work with artists and the posters, it was like, I know that I like these DJs, and if there was a song that felt appropriate for that person, we went with it. And the first ones we approached had, some of them actually got to pick their song versus us just saying, this is your song. But they're just people we like and sort of secretly want to work with somehow. And this was a way to do it. And
So with the world starting to reemerge, what's coming up in the foreseeable future for Khruangbin?
In the road. Get back on the stage. Like Mark said, we're kind of all terrified about it in our own ways, but it's a really exciting thing, to go back out and play for people. It's just really a lot of practice, and it's been a while. I think the nervousness leading up to it is a lot like the same nervousness I had leading up to my wedding day. It's a very exciting event, but you're worried about all of the what's gonna happen, but it's a really exciting, cool thing on the other side of it.
Do you think anything is going to have actually changed after this process? And if there was one thing that you would like to see different,
maybe everyone's washing their hands a little bit more now. Hopefully. That would be my wish for the world outside of that. But, maybe everyone's a little kinder to each other, and we don't take for granted the ability to gather together in large numbers and celebrate the things we love.
I remember for a certain point during this pandemic when kind of everything shut down, and everything was very, very quiet, and the birds started coming back out, and the air was much cleaner, and everything was looking really out. I wish we wouldn't lose sight of that. Like just getting right back to business as usual, killing ourselves and the planet. Maybe we could just not do that. That's the lesson I would like to keep from that.
I hope that we as a people learn how to move more slowly, I think.
That's a good one.
Just because we're always trying to do 5 things at once to maximize the hours in the day, myself included in this thing. And I think it's nice to just, take it easy sometimes. Take more breaks, take more naps.
Seriously, Khruangbin, thank you so much for taking some time to sit with me today. I wish you the best of luck with the future.
So much. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Laura Lee, Mark, and DJ for joining us here on Radio Juxtapoz. The Mordechai remix album is out now, featuring special cuts from the likes of My Joy, Soul Clap, and Quantic. That's it from me, Doug Gillen, this episode. Evan and myself will be back once again with you guys real soon. Till then, take care of yourselves and each other.